joining us back on the 905 podcast for part 2 because we didn't have enough in part 1. Courtney Charles, Vice President of Basketball Franchise Operations. Courtney, season just wrapped. How are you feeling?
It's a great feeling. I'm excited. These are one of those times where you really wish you were in your regular environment where you're able to, be among your family and friends and, have your fans be able to witness a great opportunity of us not only playing a pretty good regular season, but to be qualified for the playoffs here. But based on our circumstances, we're just as excited and we actually take pride in the circumstances that we're put in and really glad that our guys locked in and really bought into defying all odds of what we're faced with. And we're excited for that first game.
Courtney, Chad Sanders, obviously Patrick Mutombo and his staff have done an incredible job going and, starting off, trying to figure out that group, right? How have you experienced it from your end? You've gotten to, watch all the games. How have they, from your perspective, managed the bubble and navigated, obviously doing a tremendous job so far?
Well, I think the first thing was we really went and did our research. We really went and followed, what the NBA experience was with our team and try to take our best practices from there. And we made sure to make all of that information and resources available for our players and for our staff. And it's something where being here myself was one of the key things to make sure that I truly understood what our team was going through by being here with them and help to make any changes or adjustments or provide even more resources if necessary. So it's really been a great opportunity. The GLeague, hats off to them. They really have found a way to do 15 games in 25 days, which is no easy feat and not going to be able to please everybody. But I think if you really have the passion and the love for the game of basketball, you'll find a way. And I'm glad that we are the group that has shown that we can lock in and play hard and be away from our normal circumstances, but still find a way to thrive.
Courtney, you're not playing, so I can ask you this. How tired are
you? Let's be honest. So we had 11 o'clock game this morning. I normally have a routine of doing, a little bit of a walk and maybe a little bit of a workout. So when you look at today's game, it's, those things are going to have to definitely wait, not waking up any earlier than normal. And then you look at like this afternoon where you kind of win and you kind of go, okay, regular season's over. Let's get ready for the playoffs. And it's like, oh, got to jump on this podcast. Oh, got to go do testing. Oh, we might order food for our players tonight to kind of like just bring them together and thank them for the fight thus far. And, I'm watching a little bit of UFC lately and not a huge fan, but I do like Israel and just, his skills. So I don't know if I'll be young enough to stay up and be able to watch that live. I may have to wait till tomorrow for highlights. So just dating myself a bit and just showing you it's a grind either way.
And on to that grind, what's, the next little bit, like your team's sort of in this one and done scenario, how do you best support them from your position?
So in our position is like we said, let's try to get them a really good meal and let's get their body rejuvenated with some, hydrating and some of that stuff that, not just the food's been really good here, but it's like, let's get them something they really want to enjoy and to enjoy the moment as well. I think sometimes we don't want to look too far ahead, but let's enjoy today. And today was an accomplishment of what we planned for the regular season of coming together, one, making the playoffs, but displaying disciplines and getting better as basketball players. And I think our team believes they understand what our goal is as a group, but they also understand how coach is trying to help them individually as well, for them to see the growth in their game. So again, 15 games in 25 days, there's a lot of things that you challenge them to. And we want to be able to bring them back tonight and say, hey, really great job. We're going to ask more of you, but you've earned it. And you've got to take that as a positive that you've got new expectations. And, it was one of those things where you see people leaving today, and they're leaving and they're a little bit happy because they get to go home and see their family. But we all know that we will eventually see ours, but the goal is to do what we came here for and try to win this entire thing.
You guys finished number 1 in the G League. You guys came there, set out to do what you guys did. You guys have a top 5 player in offensive contributions in Ellenson and the number 1 offense in the G League. So I'm just going to point that out and give you your flowers for congrats on a really great regular season.
Yeah, I think that's something Coach touched on today. You know, today we were playing the number 1 defense, and It was going to be very interesting to see how our offense played against the number 1 defense. And, you know, that first couple of plays, you're wondering, okay, are we going to be able to figure this out? Are they going to be able to stifle us a little bit on how hard they play with defense? And we went up, you know, a quick 10 points. And from there, you know, we knew we were in a good place and we knew what we could do. And then at that point, it's just consistency. You know, it's understanding that this game doesn't necessarily mean a ton like some of the other games later today. That are, you know, fighting to actually be in the playoffs, and for our guys to really stay true to who we are and to follow the plan is really the part that, you know, all of this is only done because of them. But we are providing them as much information as possible. Again, hats off to our coaches, hats off to Chad and our ops team. And again, I need to make sure we do a huge shout out to not only our staff in Toronto, who are unfortunately not able to work with us here, but also to our fans and everybody else that are cheering us on.
Absolutely. And it's pretty incredible that you guys played against the number 1 defensive team to finish off your regular season, going on an, 8-game win streak now, which is also speaks volumes to itself. I won't lie, as a former player in myself, I'm a little nervous because I'm like, they're on an 8-game win streak. They're heading into playoffs. They could extend this win streak all the way through, but I also understand the mentality of maybe getting a monkey off your back or working out some kinks. So does this single elimination work in your favor, do you think, going into this?
I think that's a fun question. I think it's always great to say, you know, what if it was this and what is it that? I think coach's philosophy and our guys know it. Just play every game like it's your last and just play as hard as you can and play our way. You know, that's something that you'll hear during our games. If the mic picks it up, we're not playing our basketball. And that happens sometimes. You know, you saw it today when you get up 20 points, you get comfortable. You want to do a little ISO. You want to do a little through the legs. You want to do a behind the back pass. You start thinking highlight reel, or you start thinking of what can get you on ESPN or TSN. And Sportsnet and so forth and trending. So at some point, our philosophy has always been, let's just play our brand of basketball. And we've had enough games where we were down 20. And I think to the winning streak, we came back and won some of those games. And coming back to win those games sets you up for single elimination. It allows you to realize you can be down. You can, you know, look like you're out. You can be tired. We had some games where we were 7 at night and 3 the next day. So there was excuses for us to lose a couple, but we didn't. And I think going into the single elimination, we now have the confidence that as long as we play 48 minutes, we're giving ourselves the best chance.
Yeah, that's you touched on a couple really good points. One being, and I'll phrase it the way I would say it is, the team learned how to win. You know, in that short period of time, being up, being down, they went through so many different, you know, scenarios. They learned how to win in that time. And that's, you know, hats off to the crew, all of you, for doing that in such a short period of time. The second piece is, you know, you touched on, that prepares them, you know, Sav, they got to lose a game, which is good. It's the undefeated stuff that scares me, is being completely undefeated, but, you know, losing those games early, figuring them out, and then, you know, coming back and learning how to win. I thought, you know, for this group, as we've watched them, an incredible, you know, opportunity for them, incredible learning for them. Now, this group is, and we said this earlier, is experienced, you know, in the sense that you have lots of guys with NBA, you know, sort of pedigree, although they're young, you know, you're Nick Stauskas, you're Henry Ellenson, guys who have played legitimate games in the NBA, were highly, you know, high draft picks. How important was that for this group as it was coming together? how have you seen it sort of play out? Obviously, you're number one, so there's some tremendous value there. But how are you looking at that?
I think it's all things that we took in consideration. We are an organization that thrives on bringing the best out of talent. I want to say the NBA experience helps. We also love the young, up and coming players as well. So for us, I think it really just, again, not to put it all back onto coach, but I think he really has developed a philosophy. And I think you touched on it just now when you said learning to win and building to win. But, coach's slogan is just win. And at some point you find any way necessary. So I think with the veteran experience we have, it allows our team to see the NBA attributes these players have. I think it's very important for GLeague players who have not played in the NBA to really understand that you have to have this high level attribute that gets you to the NBA. It's great to be a jack of all trades, but it's really good if you are a master of something, So when you look at Nick, he's a master of shooting. And when you look at Gary Payton, he's a master of defense. And his steals numbers are unbelievable. I'm not sure why anybody ever throws a pass in direction of where Gary is. It just doesn't make sense, because at some point it's considered stolen before you even let go of the ball. And then, you look at Henry, he's really been that young talent who has had a couple cups of coffee, who's really building that confidence and starting to realize, okay, I really got to work on a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And then I'm going to start showing a little bit more of how I'm an offensive weapon in this game at my size. And he's become, such a better player because of that. So it is great to have those experiences, but it's really been the buy-in from them. And then obviously our coaches just giving them as much information as possible for them to be able to do their job at a high level.
That's incredible. And, you guys have, like you outlined right there, so much talent. I was, when you're taking me through it, I was literally like, almost like a movie trailer was playing before my eyes when I was like, 3-point specialist. Like, don't even let the ball leave your hands before it's stolen. So I was like, this is incredible. But, what also speaks volumes to me personally is the fact that, we see a player like Matt Morgan, and he was not getting minutes in the beginning of the season. And here he is starting how many games now and having serious contributions, especially in this last regular season game where he went off in the third quarter for 11 points. Really kind of putting that separation in the game, that much needed padding to ultimately take it to the win. You talk about the character and the selflessness of this team. It's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to do it. And how was this team able to really execute that this season?
Yeah, great question with Matt Morgan. I asked that question myself personally, and I can be humble in sharing that I know him. I've watched him over the last 2 years. Clearly, it is my job this year specifically to do that. But last year, I watched him from the position I was in, and I honestly pulled over Ryan Schmidt, our assistant coach today, and I said, please just break it down for me on who this young man is today compared to a year ago, because Ryan had worked with him last year, and it was amazing because when you see him perform at the level he's performing now, you're wondering, has it always been there? And it's just because he's getting the time now. Obviously, when Malachi was with us, he was obviously behind playing him. So Ryan said it perfectly. It's the GLeague experience, it's the basketball experience, it's the basketball growth, and then the key thing that we always think everyone always has, but you can always have a little bit more, is just the confidence, right? We all stay ready. We all are ready for the call up, but it's really different when you truly know that you belong and that you truly have put in the work to be here. And then obviously our coaching staff has told him we trust him and we need him. And he's stepped up and he's been so inspirational. The other night in the fourth quarter, I looked over and he had played, the entire fourth, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, do I say something? I feel like he needs a sub. And the next play, he drives as hard as he can to the hoop. And I'm thinking, never mind, he's not tired. He's going to be all right, and these are the things where you go to them after the game and you say, hey, I know you haven't played as much as you wanted in the past, but you are doing what you need to do now, which is you're leaving it all on the court. And I'm so proud of him, and I'm so proud of the group. But that's a great question, Savanna. It's definitely something where you have a player more than 1 year in the G League is very rare. They usually have moved on in some capacity. So to have him 2 years in a row and to see this growth, hats off to our development team, hats off to our scouting staff, and hats off to the players for buying in and believing.
So you've seen the 905 since its inception. In fact, you helped bring it to the G League. Is this the strongest team that there's ever been?
Those are fighting words, Charles.
I know. But I'll say this. I think this is the most talented team that there's ever been. And I attribute it to a number of things, and you correct me if I'm wrong. One, COVID, right? The situation that is, less jobs, blah, blah, blah. We can go through that. But this team is really special in my eyes. It's got a lot of everything it needs. You got guys that can defend in Gary Payton. You got guys that can shoot the three at almost every position, right? You got paint touch guys. You got a little bit of everything at a super high level. In my opinion, no offense to any other team ever, even the championship teams, this is the best team that's ever been assembled. And listen, rightfully so. As we continue to move, we should always be trying to get better and better. My opinion. What's yours?
So let me just make sure I pre-phrase a few things before I go.
I can say it right now. You can. That's fair.
The Raptors are the Raptors, and we always continue to try to build better teams. So that's always going to be the mindset. We're never satisfied with what we have done and where we plan to go. So the next phase is, shout outs to John Wiggins. Obviously he was part of that winning team. And I am definitely trying to support and help what he's built and keep it going. So, there's going to be a little bit of bias there. But then I also have to make sure that I do not say anything too alarming, because Jerry Stackhouse is a very good friend and a very passionate coach. So I know whatever I do say, I will have a phone call from him specifically. So I think it's really interesting on just, for me, as long as, we can get to that chance and win a championship, I will then use that as the comparison. What we have done right now is a high accomplishment based on the circumstances, as you stated. But it's a regular season, and we need to go win these single elimination games, and we need to win a championship to then even have a comparison. And when we do that, we will definitely do another podcast. We might have some special guests to make sure that they can defend or to speak on their behalf, as I would rather an open discussion, a open chat, so that we can make sure that we compare apples to apples as much as possible. But it is something where, like I said before, our group has really put a great team together, knowing that, yes, there are less teams participating. So you are able to have more talent on one team. But, the same thing we said to our guys, there's 18 teams here, and we are one that has been able to do it the way we have, record or not. Records don't always establish who teams are. But for us to move from Canada to the US, have to deal with the border, have to transfer things. Some people are able to just send things the next day if they needed something else. We've got to at least think 2 days because it may get stopped. So I think, just taking all those things in, we're very excited, very happy that we can be in the position we are. And yes, we will, as soon as I get off of this podcast, call everybody up and tell them there's a team that we also want to beat, which is a previous Raptor 905 team.
I love it. What an answer. Now, what an unbelievable answer. Well done. And just so we're all clear, shout outs to all the past coaches, players. Definitely no.
Don't be backtracking now, Charles.
No harm. Definitely not backtracking. Stand by my statement, by the way. But what an unbelievable team. I just think, from top to bottom, it's really well built. So have those in the past. great coaches, et cetera, et cetera. Saf?
Yeah, Courtney, we talk about what's on the floor a lot, but I want to talk about the bench bosses being the assistant coaches and the new head coach, Patrick Mutombo himself. How have they contributed to the successful season?
This is a really special one for me. Again, like I said, I've watched 905 from afar. I've been part of it. As Charles talked about, bringing Henry Chow and bringing John over to be part of our organization was always, one of the true blessings. But this year is a little special because our team is truly built with a lot of Raptor personnel. And a lot of these Raptor personnel are doing a lot of their roles for the first time. Even if you look at Eric Corey, who's now been with the Raptors 905 for 2 years, his last year was his first time, but he's now considered the vet from a 905 perspective, right? Ryan Schmidt was always there as well, but he actually sits in a different seat than he did last year. So it is a beautiful, when we're talking about inclusion and we're talking about all these things of giving people an opportunity, this has been one where Brittney is now in charge of key things that she can be truly held accountable. And John Bennett is now the master of all of what he's done, but now truly show how it affects winning. And now Pat, who has developed players over the years from his time in the D League, what it was then, and then the teams that he's been on in the past, and then obviously Raptors and a championship. Now he gets to develop his philosophy and he's learned so much about himself, right? It's one of those things where you always think you know what you're going to do. I remember when I was about to have my first child, we used to always talk about what we're going to do with our kids. And people would say, that means nothing until you have them. Because when you have them, then you know how you're going to truly react. And to see these coaches go through these games and the simulation of it, where it's, do we need a timeout now? What do I do? Do we challenge? Do we make a sub? These are all real life things. I've been able to be here close up and personal to see the decision making, to see the time that has been put in, the hours of sleep that we always say we don't get. I get to see it for real. So it's unbelievable on what our group has been able to do. Again, hats off to our leadership team and Masai, Bobby, and Teresa and Dan in believing that these young people deserve an opportunity of owning and running something of their own. And like I said, if we can get through these next three, it's really going to be a celebration in many ways.
You mentioned Brittney Donaldson, and I was talking to Henry Ellenson and Matt Morgan today after the game, and they mentioned to me that Brittney's undefeated in her scout so far.
No, it's a great point, right? It's one of those things where you start saying, okay, well, this is where you've put in the work and you've earned the right to maybe have the opportunity to continue doing it. And Brittney has been unbelievable. It's one of those things where the opportunity for women is really growing, and we've been leaders of it, and we continue to want to be leaders of it. And success, as I've said before, this is how you prove that you are willing to make impact to change, is to have people involved. It could be women, it could be people of color. It needs to be everybody. You need to include them. You need to have them share, and you also have to hold them accountable, and you have to teach them. Nothing changes from the work process, but you have to make sure you highlight it. You have to make sure you support it. And she's been unbelievable. I take my hat off to her. It's one of those things where we wish we could have brought more people and had even more diversity, but there was a limit of how many people we could bring. But she's been key. Those guys believe in her. They support her by demonstrating it on the floor. And that's all you can ask. And that's truly the way that hopefully she realizes that she's having a huge impact, even if people don't always acknowledge it. But I will make sure to acknowledge it. And I just also want to give a shout out to Charles's point earlier about having players have a second year with a team. to see Matt and Henry do that interview together today was like, that's what you want to see people do, man. You want to see people come together and say, hey, man, let's share this moment. We've put in work over the last 2 years together, and let's end this regular season doing an interview together. And again, so for me, this group has been unbelievable in understanding the Raptors 905 culture and buying in and being a bond that is transparent to who we are and who we want to be. And hopefully we can just keep it going.
Shout out to Stefano on that one, Charles.
Stefano's the guy. Stefano's the man. You talked about a culture, there, and a culture, and you've touched on inclusion and how important it is. I want to sort of move just to you and your role as you're taking it on and going to be carrying the torch, so to speak. How much of a focus, how deliberate, how important is that ensuring that there's diversity and inclusion? And again, it seems like a weird question, but I mean, in terms of, is it at the forefront, sort of how does it play into your decision-making, your process in your role?
Great question. I think, especially in my first year here, I have not been as deliberate as I would be normally and as an intentional. I know I've challenged everyone else to use those words and to live by them. I think for me, it was more of a observation year, knowing that this team has been run so well by its previous leaders and its current GM in Chad. And obviously with Jam as the head coach last year, as you can contest, Charles. So for me, having Patrick come in and working with Chad, there's been a little bit of a more observation to make sure I understand how we got here and how we've built it and how I can support that. And as we move forward, continue to add things here and there that I think can only help. For example, I've touched on this before, this podcast is an example. How do we get to know our personnel a little bit more on and off the court? How do we give opportunities to people like yourself and Savanna? So for me, there have been some things that I've been very deliberate, very intentional on. Most of it I've been observing and watching as I want to be a student of the greatness that has been set before me. Franchise of the year is to not be taken lightly. And I need to respect that. And as much as I've got ideas and different philosophies, I want to make sure that I'm supporting what has been successful and adding to it and then building a continuous understanding of what we want to do going forward.
That's a great perspective to have, because it's in order to make change or reinvent the wheel, you got to know what the wheel is in the first place, and it's a successful one already. So it's a great perspective to have, and it's not a knee-jerk reaction coming in and doing things. It's let me see what's happening first, observe, and then take the next steps. So I appreciate that, and thank you for sharing that with us. I also want to touch on the fact that the G League is all happening in a bubble in Orlando, and we saw earlier this past week, the last week of the regular season, that Jalen was in the with the 905, got sent to the Raptors, came back, and was able to make it to the bubble back in time for the protocol, so he could quarantine just in time for playoffs. How has the relationship been distance-wise when it comes to moves and decisions like that with the Raptors franchise in relationship to the 905 being right there?
Well, it's something that we've been able to really enjoy the capability of having our players be so close as an affiliation team to its parent team. So, obviously Mississauga to Toronto is successful. So Tampa to Orlando has been really good. And that's taking advantage of it, right? It's understanding how to map out things and to work with the league to make sure you stay in the guidelines that are necessary, and make sure that you take advantage. I think sometimes you see teams that maybe just don't plan, and they don't look for ways to be truly successful. And here at the Raptors 905, we try not to leave any stone unturned. We are always trying to make sure that we're better than we were yesterday, which is something that I am deliberate and intentional about. and we find a way to use as many resources as we can. If it's within the rule book, let's find a way to capitalize on it, and let's try to find a way to make our team win. And it sometimes is tough because you look at the coaching staff and you say you're going to lose a guy and you're going to gain a guy, and their reaction is probably the same every time, right? You take away at Jalen, oh, how are you going to take Jalen away? And then you bring back Jalen. It's like, okay, great, we got to add him back to the. Oh, but then we got to move somebody. Oh, wait, it's a little bit of a puzzle and a masterpiece, but we take it on as exciting challenges, and we take it on as we're going to get the best of whoever it is we have. And that's not to, disrespect a player. That's to make sure players understand, as long as you're with us, give us your best, and that's what you're going to be getting from us. And it's fun to sometimes wonder if we've thought of everything. That's the part that sometimes people say, hey, what keeps you up at night? Sometimes it's me just trying to think how much better we can be by even being more complex, right? So can we get Malachi in a game here and a game there every day? No. But those are the things that you're trying to make sure you have not dropped the ball on if it was possible.
I got excited for a second.
Right? Like, huh? Courtney, I had a question for you. 1 second, I'm trying to recall it now. Oh, sorry. So you, obviously, Masai, Chad, I have to ask this question. Before the G League was settled, before everything was kind of figured out, did you guys have maybe a little bit of a heads up that it would be in Orlando so that you could purposely strategically be the Raptors in Tampa? Was that a decision?
No, and that's a great question because our fight has always been to be at home. It's always been at home. We've never, why do we want to be anywhere else? We love where we are. We deserve to be where we are. That's where our business is run from. That's where our supporters are, our fans. We love always having new team members come to Canada itself and learn about Mississauga and the GTA area. So, no, our goal has always been to play at home. I think when the Raptors had to make the news that they were moving, we were still hoping their decision wouldn't affect us if things got better in this pandemic, right? So
gotcha.
The only reason they're moving is because they are starting before us and they have to make a decision today. We weren't making a decision for the G League at that point. So our goal was still fighting to figure out how we could message for people to be safe. Like, please be safe. Please do what's right so that we can be at home. That's always been our motto. But again, it unfortunately was not going that way. And it was obviously out of our control. We were doing everything we could possible to try to get it to a better place. And the league at some point did not necessarily have a destination that they were sold on. They were working to figure out what's the best and safe option for us. So it wasn't something where, we were going to either give more information on because we had a team in Tampa. And it wasn't something that we were thinking that far ahead that we wanted to be in Orlando because we'd be close. We really just wanted a season at that point. Like wherever it has to be, let it be there so we can have a season and hopefully as many teams can participate as possible. So no, we don't have that much power yet, I guess is really the answer to the question.
So that was a great coincidence then.
Yes, very much a great coincidence. One that we've been able to maximize our development of our players with. And to be honest, thank you to, the state of Florida here to housing us and everybody's been great. And if we couldn't be home, this has definitely been a great second place to be at.
All the Canadian snowbirds love Florida. So you're in a good place that Canadians still like.
Definitely.
Speaking of great, here's my claim or statement number 2. Raptors 905, best franchise in the G League. They got the hardware to prove it now. Have you had a chance, being in your position to connect with others, your colleagues, so to speak, your counterparts? Are you getting, nonstop sort of phone calls, or are you doing it sort of in terms of just learning, other practices and so on and so forth? What's that development like, and how's that going?
Yeah, I think it's been really cool to be in a learning opportunity, but yet be seen as the franchise who is leading in a few areas. And there are obviously some teams that do some things at a level that we want to be a little bit better at. We definitely, like I said, strive to be the best. And there's some things we're not truly the best at yet, but we are clearly working on it. So it's been interesting. I think there were a few presidents that were going to make this bubble opportunity, but weren't able to based on a few things that have come up in different circumstances. So I think I'm the only one here from my position with teams, but I do talk to them regularly. I've helped out a couple to give them a understanding of what's happening here. At some point, not that there's levels of this, but there are a player perspective, there's a coach's perspective, there might even be a GM perspective, and then there's a front office perspective. And I think that's not something that's a negative. I think it's just sometimes there are different facets to the business that you want to study and understand a bit more. No different than offense and defense. It's still a game of basketball, but one person will definitely have more of an attribute on how to defend or how to score. So I think it's been really cool that way to be kind of a resource for some of these other teams who are curious on the success of the bubble. You clearly are in a safe environment. You our accommodations and amenities are at a certain level. So it's good to understand the value of those things and to share. So I think it's been something that's been really good on our end. But it's also been great for me to learn. I was just having a conversation with Anthony Parker, who, I always looked up to as a young man growing in this business. He was a player who came from Europe that came to Toronto and is making his NBA debut. Sorry. And he was somebody that I was like, okay, this is really interesting. He's really mature. He's been really successful on the European side. Let me go pick his brain really on, why join the NBA now and how do you see the differences? And this might actually be a pay cut for him. You know what I mean? He might have made more money in Europe. So he's somebody where as soon as I got to the GLeague, I called. And as soon as I knew we had a bubble, I called. And then in the game today, I look over and I'm like, hey, there's the mentor guy I really look up to. But let's go Raptors 905. So, it's one of those things where you never stop learning. You never stop having conversations. But it is something where you always are trying to get better, and it might be even against the people that you look up to or that you share information with.
When your idols become your rivals.
Yes, it's something that I've been able to experience, which has been unbelievable. Just to touch on that real quick, because the respect I have for not only players who are now in their careers after the sport, which was something I really took a pride in having them understand would happen. I think that's something that Masai and our group has really tried to make players realize is you are here to play basketball, but try to develop as people and try to develop as people who are going to give back to your community, and you're going to help others. And then you're going to find a way to provide for your family in different ways, because it may be your basketball career that does it today, but can you continue doing that when you're done playing? And for me, just to share real quickly, Anthony Parker, Amir Johnson, Jared Jack, these are all people who I was able to really develop a relationship when I was just an intern, a coordinator, a manager, a director, and now I'm still doing it in my role today. And now they're coming to me and saying, hey, tell me about your learnings and how you started from where you are. So I've had some really great conversations down here. And then one last shout out was I had Alvin Williams and Tim from Tim and Friends this week talk to our players about broadcasting and just to hear Alvin talk about owning his craft in broadcasting the way he tried to hone his craft in basketball was just amazing for him to share with our players, because I need them to start challenging themselves to understand that they are going to be great in basketball, but make sure you're great as being a person in living this life and with people that you meet and treating people fairly and connecting with the media on a better level than just answering questions and going to the next game. Realize that these people are here to support you. It's been unbelievable to just encourage people to keep that going, because we are truly living it.
I love to hear that they're educating themselves and you're giving them the opportunity to learn from everybody in the industry, whether that be broadcasting or beyond, beyond the court, beyond what they're doing in the bubble and just playing games. So I love to hear that. Courtney, I have to ask you, and this question came up as the passion just glowed through your responses here, but what do you love the most about this job that you're in as a vice president? This is your first season, and what's another takeaway from the bubble as well?
For me, it's the people. I love to see people obviously be successful, but I love to see people just grow within themselves, grow within their passion, their craft, their skill sets. It's something that I really encourage, from the sound person that's doing this podcast to the programmer who's doing the podcast to, I want to reach out to everybody and give them motivation and to encourage them to do what they're doing and to do it the best that they can do it. And sometimes people think it's giving a shout out. Some people think it's saying thank you. Some people think it's highlighting. For me, just win. Just keep doing what you do and just win. And everything else will come from that. Be the best that you can be. Challenge yourself, but also take care of yourself. Make sure that you do everything you need to do to be healthy and to be able to do the job. It's something that I need to encourage. So for me, it's the human nature of just helping people build and grow. And to be honest, it's one of those things where I can honestly say I wanted to have a ton of children. But then I realized that, to be honest, it's the world, right? The world is your family. And what we need to do is we need to start chipping away at it each day to let everybody know you're allowed to come in my house. You're allowed to come over here. You're allowed to be part of this. During a game, maybe not so much, but after the game, come on, man, come talk. Let's grow. Let's get better. And that's really what this game does. This game allows you to realize that the person beside you is your family today. They could be your rival tomorrow, but the relationship doesn't need to change. It's just for a moment. And that's the greatness of this sport. It brings so many people together, people from all parts of the world. And they're all family just trying to get better at something. And that's what gets us through this time. That's what's got us through this bubble. And it's been amazing. And I'm so glad to be part of it. And hopefully people are starting to see that they can follow. And I will continue to lead where I can, as Masai can. And let's be leaders in our own right as well.
That's a beautiful thing. And I know, players often get criticized, post game where they're celebrating, and you hear some of the old timers say, the players are soft because why are they talking to each other? Why are they building relationships is really what they're asking, ultimately, which is a strange question if you put it that way. But that's the reality. So, what you're talking about is super valid. It's the 48 minutes between the lines, and then we're all human beings again, and we go back to caring for each other. So I really respect that point. I was going to say, Courtney, in case for all those listening, doesn't like people, Courtney is the biggest people person I've ever met in my life. I think you and Jabba might be the two right up there. But I want to ask you, what would you tell yourself at 10 about your journey and your process? So, looking back, not even your own boys, but you, what would you have gone back if you could send a message to yourself now, to the 10-year-old version of yourself? What would it be?
So I'm gonna touch on two things because I really think my mom did a great job. So not that I'm saying if I was to tell myself what to do, not that I'm calling my mom out because I think my mom did everything possible.
I was going to say shout outs to your mom, and we second that.
Yeah, my
Absolutely.
mom, she was unbelievable. And it's not that my dad didn't. My dad was more of he was more of the practical, right? He was more of the doer. So he was gone and he was working and he was, shoveling the driveway and he was doing things where my mom was the person who explained it to me. She was the person that sat me down and explained how you get paid per hour. And, that's what your dad is doing. He's going to get some hours in. Because a lot of times I think as a young person, you have a ton of questions and you don't know what you can ask and what you can't ask. And you only know what you don't know. So for me to tell myself a few things, I would go back to the self-care part, which is I would probably eat some more of my mom's home cooked food when I was 10 than wanting some of this external food that everybody thinks is always better and great, that you can save your money on if you were actually eating food that's prepared for you. I would probably get a little more sleep because I was always doing what I do now, which is always trying to get better. So I didn't take as much sleep. I might have been a little taller. I might have been a little stronger if I had got some of that rest. But outside of those two things, I really don't know if I tell myself much more than to really, lock in on the education, listen to your parents, and then try to do as many things as possible instead of maybe even saying to hone in on one craft. I think sometimes we get a little bit blindsided by thinking we need to be really good at one thing. So it's like, I'm going to be a pianist. I'm just going to learn piano. I would say when you're 10, play the piano, play the guitar, you've got the time. You know what I mean? You usually got the support. I can honestly say when I was 10, grandma was still willing to buy me a gift. My aunts and my uncles were willing to still come to a show and watch me do something. So for me, I would really tell people and tell myself, explore, see as much as you can, learn as much as you can. So then you can even learn more about yourself. So hopefully that answers your question. I know it's a little bit of a cop out of something specific, but I truly think that I was blessed in everything that I saw. And if anything, I should have probably just saw a little bit more to even open up the mindset a bit.
You're not a cop out at all. You're talking to someone, as you know, who's into a lot of different things, but certainly I think that's a really important piece of advice for anybody, especially now. We know that in 20 years, our kids will likely be doing jobs that don't even exist at this point, right? So it's important to keep an open mind. So I'm with you.
Now, Courtney, I don't want to take too much more of your time, as I know you have a busy night ahead ordering food, doing something with the team maybe later. But I want to ask, we look at the 2019 championship team and where those players are today. A lot of them are playing for the Raptors now. And we look at this team, and not to quite compare, but I don't care. I'm going to compare. They're playing really well and say they're just as successful. How far do you think these individuals can go?
Well, I love the direct questions today. I don't know if this was from part one that I might not have been clear and not been precise. So I love how y'all are coming back at me today. I almost feel like I need to pull out my Nexus card. So, this is the fun part of the job, which is getting your roster the first day. I remember sitting in the meetings with Chad, and I'm really there to learn and listen about the GLeague level and to understand how it, works to going into the NBA level and building a team and understanding all of those things. So, you get your roster at first and you say, okay, well, what can we do well and what can we work on and what are the challenges? And to be where we are today, again, hats off to our group who helped us build this team. We've got some Raptor members who are really key on this. So we'll give them a quick shout out: Isaac Lax, Luke Wynn, Patrick Ingerbirch, Curtis Crawford, Keith Bayorski, Kathy, who works in that office. Shelby's been involved in giving some insight. So for me, it's like building it has been great. And then hearing the visions on where they think we will be at the end of the regular season going into the playoffs. And again, we don't talk about it too far in advance, as you have asked, but I think it's a challenge that we do normally have to have a ceiling, a potential, aspect of it all. And if people buy in and do things well, then what is their growth? And it's something that these guys have shown. Again, Charles talked on it. NBA experience for a reason. NBA attributes for a reason. I think let's pick a player. Nick has been unbelievable, as we expect, on the offensive end, but he's been great on the defensive end. He's taken pride in it. So for me, if someone said, well, his defense is maybe not where it needs to be, I would say he is trying. He has made an effort. And that's all you can ask. And for that person that still doubts, then that's when you look at your record and you say, here's the record. And hopefully you win a championship and you say, here's the championship. And at some point, that's the philosophy of just win. So the talent is gonna take you where it can based on you just winning. And if we keep winning like we did in 2019, you develop talent believes, confidence goes up, people work harder because now you want to defend, you want to continue. And to me, you've now built the culture of what builds people and builds basketball.
Courtney is ready with the receipts, yo. He's there. He's right back. Like, look at this. Charles, do you have any more questions for Courtney?
No, listen, winning solves a lot, right? Plugs those gaps, and it's definitely a big one. Courtney, I just want to thank you for your time. I want to ask one last question. We talked about to the young, we talked about your kids, we talked about you giving advice to the 10-year-old version. There's a lot of people trying to break into this industry and be where you are. What can you share with them as far as we both know there's no linear path, but what can you what are some of the common denominators that they can do to help them at least start moving in the right direction?
Great question. I think I get it asked so much that I don't even know anymore if there's an answer for it, because every individual is so unique, and you want to almost try to customize something for them specifically, because for me, this game of basketball touches on so many different departments that my one answer today doesn't necessarily touch on all those departments, right? So for me, let's just stick to basketball. If you have a passion for this game, just figure out what your strengths are truly, and then figure out where you have areas of opportunities that need to get better. And then it's really owning in on them and finding mentors and teachers and educators and experience that can help you build who it is you want to become. Because I think, you see it at this level, and I don't mean to call this out specifically, but I think this is an area where everybody would say you need to grow. But you know what? Hats off to the referees, right? Who said they wanted to be a referee? I don't know how many people were in school that raised their hand and say they want to be a referee, but I would be a referee if that meant I could be part of basketball. I'll be honest with you. If I couldn't do what I'm doing, I would think about it, but I have to be prepared for the criticism that's going to come with it. But if I'm a referee, I need to find a way to become relatable. I got to be able to talk to the players and the coaches. I've got to find a way to study and get better, to not have the same mistakes. I got to find a way to stay in shape so I can get up and down the floor to see the plays as they happen at real speed and not be blowing the whistle 3 seconds later, right? So I think that's an example where referees probably get no love ever in the game of basketball. Male, female, doesn't matter what race, they get no love, right? There's no championship game for them. But for them to be in the championship game means they've usually earned the right based on experience and based on their scorecard of how they're evaluated. And to me, that would be the challenge. Realize that the criticism might always be there. You may never be truly liked. But if you're part of this sport, continue to work at it, continue to be the best you can be. And trust me, if you make a good call, there is a chance that somebody might say, good job. They might even say thank you. Now, the other coach on the other side may not. But I think that's the part that I try to show people, which is you may not win in all areas of it, but just really figure out what it is you want to do. Find some people to work with to get you there. and realize it's going to be an everyday learning and an everyday growth. So again, not to avoid the question, but to, be honest, there's so many facets to this game, and there's no one answer to please everybody, but the work is going to be in every department.
That's a great answer. And just so we're clear, I've always said thank you to officials, and hats off.
So do I.
Truly. Hats off truly to officials who do not get enough credit. I will give you that. Courtney, I just want to say thank you. Much appreciated.
No, thank you both. I appreciate you guys spending the time, and I thank you all for what you do for the sport, and thank you for Title League, and thank you for all our Raptors supporters, and thank you for our Raptors group who helped to put on this podcast. Huge thank you to everybody, and let's just continue to get better than we were yesterday. Let's look forward to our game on Monday. It will be decided here in a little bit. I think there's a game on right now that I'm watching in the corner of my eye here that's got some interest. And then we've got one tonight that also could balance it out. So, let's get excited and let's get ready as we're going to have some great basketball here during this next week.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on the podcast. Best of luck in playoffs, and congrats one more time on the incredible regular season.
Appreciate you all. Take care.
Charles, there was so much hidden gems in that conversation. We could have talked to him forever. I think there might potentially be a part 2 to this sometime. I don't know, but I want to wish them luck in the playoffs. Courtney's such a great speaker, role model for those guys, and him talking about education off the court just as important as the performance on the court as well. What was your takeaway?
Well, I'll go back to, I'll say this, good luck to the folks there, the team, the organization. I'll say it again, one of the best teams assembled and staffs and so on. So really, really, great job and hats off. And again, I'm excited about the potential in the future. I mean, this organization has just flown and has taken off and doing such great things and really, really invested in the 905 program. So looking forward to that. I take that away. I take the relationship piece that Courtney brings each and every day to his work. He brings his whole self to work, and he gives you 150%. And so that's who he is, and I'm glad people are getting to know him even better.
Absolutely. And thank you guys, listeners, for tuning in. It's been a great regular season so far. Of course, we got the playoffs coming up. So once again, good luck to the 905 in the playoffs. And don't forget, you could tune in and listen to this podcast anywhere where you find your podcasts.
Bring home the chip.